we're going to take a look at the Benchmade Freak. This is an S30V steel, has a 3.6 inch cutting edge, 8.5 inches overall. The model number on this is 560. It does have the axis lock, and you do have a one-directional pocket clip, but it is reversible, tip up only, which is great because that's how I prefer to carry my knives anyway. This is my work knife. I have been carrying this at work every day for about 6 months now, and I have put it through a range of tasks, some things above and beyond what you should use most knives for, and it is holding up really well. We're going to take a look at some other knives, give you an idea of size, and even some options, depending on how much you're looking to spend. This is a really good knife. This is the first Benchmade I really started carrying, and I have fallen in love with it. Just to let you know, this is not the factory edge. I do sharpen my own knives. One of the first things I do is put my own edges on them. Out of other knife companies, Benchmade I find is one of the better ones with their factory grinds. They do come really sharp, but their factory grinds, generally speaking, from what I have noticed, is really well. Most of the time I don't even have to reprofile. I just put a finer, keener edge on, up more to my liking. We will be using a few different, cutting some different materials with it to give you an idea. But before we start, you can see we do have a very sharp edge, so we'll see how well that holds up by the end of testing. But I do really love this S30V steel. It does hold up very, very well. Alright, so let's just get right into different sizes and we'll get into more of the fun stuff. Alright, so right here we do have the Benchmade Freak. Another good option, just about half the price here. We have the Spyderco Delica. This is in VG10 steel. We also have, if you like D2 steel, a little smaller, we have the Rat 2 by Ontario. Also in D2 we have the Steel Wheel Modus. Kind of give you an idea size-wise. These options here are a little bit smaller, depending on what it is that you are looking for. I do have some knives here that are about the same size. Similar to S30V, we have S35VN. This here is the Cold Steel Code 4. This is another very good, robust knife. I love that knife a lot. Another steel wheel, we have the Steel Wheel Cut Jack. This also is in D2. This here we're getting very close in size. I would say the probably most competitive option with it, size and price-wise, will be here, the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. This is also an S30V. We do have a different blade grind. The Benchmade Freak has a high saber grind, and this one is a full flat grind. Alright, and then just for funsies, this is a small fixed blade. This is the Mora Eldris. This is in 12C27 steel, if anyone is interested in that. And then also just for funsies, another knife I like to carry has a longer cutting edge, much longer overall. This is the ZDP 189 version of the Spyderco Endura. Just to give you somewhat of an idea, this also goes roughly for the same price as the Paramilitary 2 and also the Benchmade Freak. Alright, so roughly what I use this at work for every day. I work maintenance at an apartment complex, so anything from cutting cardboard, I've used this for scraping caulking and grout out of tile, which, yes, is very damaging to the edge, but in a pinch it will work, and S30V you can put a good edge back on very quickly. I have used this also for opening paint cans. Also, it's never recommended to pry with any knife, let alone a folding knife, but again, you're in a pinch, this is what I got it for, as a beating knife, and it has held up very well. The blade centering on it has remained very well. It's moved a little bit, but usually with just disassembly or playing with the pivot, it will go right back. I've sharpened this knife probably 5 or 6 times now. I have only once had any chipping on the blade. I know that's something that a lot of people with S30V do not like, but that was something that was more my fault than the knife itself. I feel like most other knives, with what had happened, would have chipping or very serious rolling. I was slicing cardboard, went through it very quickly, and then dinged the belly right about here off of a metal dumpster. And it was a very minor chip, but it was noticeable. It was not a roll, it was definitely a chip. Brought it home after work, 15-20 minutes start to finish. It was back to a beautiful shaving sharp edge. That was the only time I had any, with any of my S30V knives, have I had any chipping. Now, using for different materials, one thing I will have to cut a lot is zip ties. This actually does very well cutting zip ties. Just got a couple of funky colored ones. Everybody uses the black. I just thought, for the sake of demonstration, it would be easier to show the prettier colors. I like this blue one best, honestly. But see, it just right through. I set up a little cutting board here just to show more. See, it's going right through, very mild pressure. I have had to cut a few times. These are tile spacers from times having to replace tile. Sometimes if you're putting them in a corner, you need to shave off some. It just takes them right off. These are kind of a little bit of a softer plastic, but it just slices right through them. You get a good surface on it. This knife performs very, very well. Another two, this is probably more for people. I haven't had to cut rope too much, but more people do a lot of work with rope. This is just some twine. You get it at any garden store, but it just slices right through. You don't even, just doing the push cuts. Don't have to do a slicing motion. So you can even double it up some, and then right through. Oh, see that? Right here, two pieces, and it's right through. Now this is just more of a demonstration of some softer materials. This is just that foam rubber stuff you'll see at a lot of gyms. Just pressing, not even, you can do a slice, very nicely slices through. But if you don't want to do that, you just need to do a quick push cut, boom, and you are through. Also, I attribute a lot of the slicing potential with it because it does have the high saber grind. You see it's flat up to here, and then it just tapers downwards. Now I have read on a few websites, it does say that this is hollow ground. That may be, but if this is hollow ground, this is the shallowest hollow grind I have ever seen. Versus if you look at the Code 4 by Cold Steel, this is a hollow grind. You can see the hollow in it. Hollows do generally are a much better slicer than the high saber grinds. But a high saber grind, or just a saber grind in general, tend to be a little more robust. This is what I do like about it, and it does have very good slicing ability. The edge does get very thin because it starts way up here, and that taper down, it does lend the edge to be very thin once you get to it. Another thing, this is just an old soda bottle, but you can see it just pierces right in. Almost don't even have to. It just cuts right through. But this, once you get through, just slices. Also does help when it's very sharp. Now sometimes, this is going to be a little more tough on the edge. We have sandpaper. This is rough 60 grit. Now, I know most people just bend and tear. This does work, but sometimes you just want a very precise piece. And you can get nice, even pieces the size that you need. You have to use a little more force, but you can go right through it. And you have to go through a couple of times. That's why it's better cut from the back. Let's see. And our edge is still looking pretty good after that. That is some tough stuff, that sandpaper. Let's do a couple more for funsies. Yeah, you just snap them off where you need. Another thing too, sometimes I do very minor wiring. I'm not an electrician, but sometimes just have to cut wire. If you don't always have, like I carry a multi-tool, I don't always have it with me. Sometimes I'll forget it, or I'll leave it in the shop. So you can just cut right to size as you need. Here we go. That sandpaper did do a little number on it. But here we go. Going right through. Just take a look how our edge is doing. Alright, so we're getting a little bit of hang up now on the belly right where we cut the sandpaper, but that's fine. Luckily I know someone who can sharpen knives. Alright, now if you have to do any wood carving, now I do a lot of wood carving. I know they do make special knives for wood carving, the Scandinavian grinds. But just for fun, I like to use non-typical knives. You can remove a lot of material with this, and especially with a nice sharp edge. And then we'll use the belly here. We're still getting good amount of material out. And this is a piece of dry seasoned oak, which is very hard wood. And we're still getting amazing carving out of it. This isn't really a work task. I don't really have to do much wood carving, if you will, but this is just a good demonstration of a keen edge. This is very hard seasoned wood. I do love oak though. Alright, that's enough. Now, how much does this go for? I know that's something for a lot of people. Alright, so this knife you can get for about $120. Now I know that sounds like a lot, but honestly, for what you are getting, it really is not too bad at all. Like I said, this is $120 and this is my work knife. I know a lot of people wouldn't spend that much money on a knife that they're going to beat on, but I want something that I can rely on, depend on, I don't have to worry about, something I can sharpen easily, and it holds an edge for a very, very long time. But if you do like, there are some other options as well. If we go back to the Cold Steel Code 4, this one, like I said, you do have S35VN, so it's a slightly updated steel, a slightly updated variant of S30V. The steel, I read and understand, is supposed to be easier to sharpen. For me, I don't notice any difference. They sharpen about the same. It's supposed to, instead of chipping, be more apt to roll. I actually have been thinking about starting to use this at work to test out S30V as S35VN as opposed to S30V to see how well they hold up together. So I will do a video in the future after doing some testing with this to see how well they hold up, S35VN versus S30V. And also you do get aluminum handles with this. The price on this knife, you can go for about $85 versus $120, but I still find $120 is a very reasonable price for that. Also, for the same price range, if you do want, there is also the Paramilitary 2. This is the knife I carry most often outside of work. This is also an S30V, but you get G10 handles, and it also goes for about $120. You also get the full flat grind, and in my opinion, a little more fun of a lock to use is the compression lock. This Benchmade Freek, you do have the axis lock, as with the extent of my knowledge, all other Benchmades. What I do like about this knife, though, you do have, this is a rubberized texture. This black is all rubberized. The white, the gray in here, this is a hard plastic. I think Grivery, I believe. It's the same material that's used on the Benchmade Griptilian series. Everything about this knife, actually, I really can't find too much to complain about, just very minor things. One, as much as I do love this rubberized material, when I first got it, this knife was a bit of a pain to put in and take out of your pocket. just because it would just catch and just would not want to let go. That being said, when you're using it, I mean, your hands can be soaking wet, you can have oil, grease, anything, and this knife is not coming out of your hand. You do have very, very good grip on this knife, as well as it is an extremely comfortable handle. Out of all my pocket knives, and even some of my fixed blades, this is one of my most comfortable knives. You can use this knife for extended periods and not have issues with it. One downside to the rubber is I have noticed there is a little section here where the rubber is starting to come off. I noticed this about a month after I started using it. Now it has been about 6 months and it has not gotten any worse. What I think I'm going to do is just put a dab of super glue in there just so it doesn't continue and have more come off. But other than that, there are no other areas where this is starting to come off. It's just this one section. Another thing, I do love the thumb studs on it, but the thumb studs are right in your cutting path. The edge starts at here, and then about 1/4 of an inch up, you have the cutting path is interrupted with your thumb studs, which is fine most of the time. But when you're cutting cardboard, I do notice a lot it will get hung up, which can be a pain. This is a great cardboard slicer. I do a lot of cardboard slicing with it, but as I'll try and make happen, you can see when you're cutting, you get kind of hung up. You get these jagged cuts, which you don't need pretty cuts when you're slicing cardboard, but you know, when you glide through, and then you get hung up. We'll go for a long cut, probably a better example. So you can see right here, just kind of getting hung up on the cardboard a bit. Not a huge deal, but it's just annoying when you're trying to cut a lot of cardboard in a relatively quick pace. Now this knife is a lot of fun to play with. I know a few years back everybody was having fun with the fidget spinners, never really got into those, but I do love these. I just call them my fidget flippers. You know, one thing that does make the axis lock great, go away, get away, shut the window, shut the window. One thing that does make the axis lock great is that you do have ambidextrous ability, right or left-handed, and then going with the left or right side to put the pocket clip. This knife is totally ambidextrous for our left-handed friends, and it is also very easy to access. You just pull down and you flip shut. Only other downside, or I wouldn't say a downside, the only other issue I've had with this was just when I very first got it, before it had broken in, I did have 2 instances of lock stick. So basically, you'd flick it open and you go to close it and it wouldn't close. Actually, it was essentially, the first time it happened, I was like, great, I just turned this flipper into a fixed blade. To fix it, I did have to mess with it a little bit the first time. The second time, I just had to just kind of put some force down on the blade and it closed, but the first time it did not want to close. I played with the lock a lot and then just putting a lot of force, which probably they're not most recommended. There was a good chance of cutting myself, but I needed the blade to close, and it did close. It just happened 2 times. After that, it never happened again. So I have one other fixed blade, folding knife from Benchmade, the mini griptilian. I've never had that as an issue. Actually, my girl now is carrying that, and she hasn't had any issues with it. Once this broke in, it was never a problem. It was just the 2 times, the first week or so that I had had it, but it has not happened again since, which is good. I really would recommend this knife. This, for $120, this is a great value. Like I said, again, I know a lot of people don't want to spend $120 on a knife in general, let alone a work knife. This doesn't have to just be, you know, your dedicated work knife. I could carry this outside of work. It's just, I don't know, I have so many other knives. I wanted to pick one well-rounded knife I can just carry at work every day, not have to worry about it. It's always there. And this is the one that I went with. You know, and for $120, I mean, you figure, what else would you spend $120 on? You know, I mean, if you're into video games, I mean, those, you know, Xbox and PS4, whatever system they're on now, games, those go for about $60 a piece. So for the price of 2 video games, you have yourself a knife that will last for life. And speaking of video games, real quick, just want to give a shout out. One of my absolute best friends in the world, Dave Higgins, he has a channel, Sandbox Explorer, and he covers so many things about video games, the Nintendo Switch. He is a great guy. He does great editing. He's been on YouTube a few months now, actually a little longer than I have. And from his first video, it looks like he's been doing it for years. He does great quality videos. I highly recommend you go over there, give him a like and a subscribe. Just tell him that Kyle from Gnarly Knives sent you over there. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed this. I really hope you got something out of this. I will be doing reviews on some of these other knives, and you'll be definitely seeing this knife again. I definitely have to go sharpen that little belly portion now. That really was tough on it, that sandpaper, but I think the mistake was when I tried to cut it from the sand side, which I honestly never do. I don't know what possessed me to do that, but cutting it from the back side, again, really not most recommended, but you know, sometimes you're in a pinch, you just want a nice piece of sandpaper. You don't want to have to rip and tear and everything else and get the little fuzzies, you know, so I'll just give it and just, you know, sometimes you gotta give it a snap off and it's good. But really hope you liked this video. I hope you got some good information out of it. This is a superb knife, and honestly, for the price of a lot of Benchmades out there, this really is not a bad deal at all. And I'm not 100% on the price of it, but if you do want an even higher performing steel, they do offer this in M4 as well. I have considered getting, but there are a few other knives in M4 I want to get, so it might be one of those. This is Kyle with Gnarly Knives. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to go sharpen this now because I do have to take this to work tomorrow. I think I'm going to throw that dab of glue in there to fix where that's starting to peel. But you guys have yourselves a great afternoon, rest of your night. I really hope you got a lot out of this. Thank you, everyone.